Welcome to this new challenge for the Facebook Live. So that's gonna be a summer challenge with a lot of different masterclasses. We're going to cover self-leadership, emotional maturity, emotional management, intelligence, but whatever word you want behind emotion. We're gonna talk about communication, about relationships, about workplace problems, peace in homes, peace in society. We're gonna talk about people a lot. Today, I want to dive in right away, but before I start, if you think those conversations are going to benefit someone you know, to help someone to feel more comfortable around people, to build better friendships, better relationship with their family, to feel better in their skin, feel more confident, just invite them to the group and let them hear what we're going to talk about. Today, I want to talk about self-leadership. Self-leadership through the lens of superiority versus inferiority. I've been taking a masterclass, and through that different masterclasses, we were talking a lot about leadership and different aspects of leadership that includes also self-leadership, how you're able to show up for yourself. Now, what I realize that many people play small because, and I used to play small because we fear the criticism, the judgment. We fear people not liking us. We feel people rejecting us and hating us. And then we back up. We want to hide. We play small. We don't want to be exposed. And what I came to realize is that this usually comes from an old memory where people, maybe as a kid in school, were bullied. Maybe there was a new kid in school and maybe they were different. And so because they were different, they were criticized and judged rather than people being curious about that new person coming in with different thoughts and different lifestyle. Maybe there was a kid that was always the best in class, always succeeding at any task. And so that kid was rejected, criticized, saying you're just doing it to be the preferred person of the teacher rather than being admired and people asking, how did you do this? And so you transpose this behavior in adulthood. You transpose children that learn to criticize, to learn to judge rather than to be curious, to ask questions, into adults then, rather than being curious, ask a question, admire, criticize, judge, are resentful. So what I see is that a lot of time we have those behaviors from the childhood that kind of become a habit, and because they're a habit, they become a pattern, and by becoming a pattern, they're just transposed over time through the different phase of life until the person becomes an adult. And so it becomes a point where if that new person's becoming an adult has a management position, has a leadership position, then actually learned to build that leadership based on its feeling of being superior to others. And so I've heard interesting stories. I've heard people getting really, really mad, really freaked out as soon as someone else steps against them, because they're used to control everybody. They're used to control everything. They used to kind of dictate how everything should be and what people should do and how they should think and behave. But you also have people that's just stand up for themselves, that show up for themselves and don't let themselves dictate who they have to be and what they have to do. And so when the leadership is built upon how superior I feel, then as soon as someone else comes and makes me feel inferior, I get upset, I get angry, I get mad, I get crazy, insanely mad. Because it's easier to be mad and then to hate the other person that makes us feel inferior, rather than looking at ourselves at this wobbly leadership and acknowledge that our leadership is actually wobbly because the only thing that was holding this leadership was actually the feeling of being superior to everybody else. And that's what I kind of call the new kid in school wound. There is many angles we can find for explaining that kind of behavior. But this is one of the possible angles. And what I observe in society today, in our homes, in workplaces, friendships, families dynamic, is that instead of being curious and genuinely admiring the person, we actually criticize and judge because it's easier to resent the person when we feel inferior than to sit with our discomfort, feeling we lost the leadership because the leadership was sitting on just feeling superior. And so if we don't feel superior, then we're not having the leadership. And it's an identity disconstruction, so to say. When someone built its whole leadership around feeling superior, the day that person feels inferior, its identity crumbles. And that's kind of a death of an identity. I find it's extraordinarily fascinating to observe people like that and to observe how it does unfold after that. Do they catch up? Do they build a stronger self-leadership? Or do they go back in a loop and get to hate everybody that makes them feel inferior, and then they kind of resent a lot of people on earth? And in my observation, there is a lot of people like that, unfortunately. But not my client. So, the question to reflect on is, how is your leadership? Is that contextual? Or are you leading yourself no matter what? That then allows other people to follow alongside you. Do you feel you can lead people only if you're superior to them in knowledge, in expertise, in attitude, in maturity? Or do you lead no matter superiority, inferiority? Can you get out of this duality, superior versus inferior, and just lead because you have a message you have a path, you're walking your own way to get people moving with you, because you're moving, you get people moving with you. So self-leadership is in the end deciding. It's a decision. It's sometimes the question is, how do you stop doing it? How do you stop telling yourself this self-made story, telling yourself this lie, this excuse, when you decide? Your answer is, it's a decision. You decide you had enough, and now you take ownership. You take ownership of your potentiality. You take ownership of your inner power, of your self-leadership. And that comes with a responsibility. Being self-responsible is also owning it, owning how much potential you have. You alone, you don't need to feel superior to have potentiality. You don't need to feel superior to lead. Something to reflect on. And I think if everybody can step into that kind of leadership, our world would just look like so different. All right. If you want to have more conversation like this, if you want to discuss with me about something really personal, you can contact me. There is space on clarity calls. You have different options, different possibility to book a clarity call depending on where you are, what's your question, what is the topic. Don't hesitate to contact me. And other than that, I'll talk to you soon. Bye.